Hi, you two.
Hello. How are you, Iris?
I thought everybody would be clamoring to get in the way your email read.
Yeah, I thought so too, honestly. This is definitely the biggest one we've had so far.
We have a lot on the agenda.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of larger things.
Yeah.
Hello, is anyone there?
Yes. How are you?
Okay. How are you doing? Just
Very
checking
well,
in.
thanks.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Hi, Max, how are you?
Hey, Ashley, did you go to the spotlighting?
What?
Did you find out about spotlighting or isolating?
Yeah, I couldn't find it on my, so it might be like the one that we have, the version that we pay for.
Well, I'll pay for a better one. I'll authorize it.
Where's the rest of my board?
Laura's coming in right now.
Okay.
Lauren's here.
So is
Oh, I
he,
see
I
Laura.
saw he tried getting in a couple times, so I didn't know if he was having trouble. Here
No,
comes
he's there.
Reggie.
I see his puppies.
Yeah, Laura's there. So it's Laura and Reggie.
Laura's in now and Reggie's coming in right now.
Yes, Jacqueline? Unmute yourself.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It doesn't come up until somebody tells me to unmute. So I have to. Don't you laugh at me, Ashley.
Did you get your iPad working or are you using your phone?
No, I'm using my phone.
Okay.
I'm hoping we can get past these Zoom meetings before too long.
You and me both.
Oh, please.
Same.
Hello, Evelyn.
Good evening.
Where's everyone?
Give us a couple of minutes. We're waiting for 2 more board members and then we'll get this show on the road.
Great.
Did you say Laura was in, Ashley?
Yes, Laura's in. Is she? Can she get unmuted? Let me just check.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am in. I've been in for a little while. I was in a little bit before, about half a minute before 7.
Okay. So you were early and there's Reggie.
Very early. Amazingly early.
So I'm going to call to order the town board meeting for the Woodstock Town Board for Tuesday, March 23rd, our business meeting. Quick announcement for public be heard at the end of our agenda. We'll have 2 minutes apiece for up to 5 people. If you do want to speak at the end about a topic, you can put your name in chat and Ashley will keep the list. The first 5 folks will be heard. We will be, of course, taking some comment on the various topics as we go along. But I ask everybody that while the meeting is going on, except for the board members and for Jackie, if everybody else could stay muted so that we can keep it going at a good clip. The other thing, other announcement real quick, just a reminder that the town is in the process of looking for a new assessor. Mark Plate, our former assessor, is retired. He's still working a little part-time, but we are looking for someone. We did put a post on Facebook. So if anybody's interested, I can get the specifics. But if you're interested, give us a call here at the office. And with that, Evelyn, where'd you go? There you are. I will turn the meeting over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Bill. Thanks so much for inviting me to be here this
Oh.
evening.
Glad to have you here. Is Dennis here as well, or are you solo tonight?
You know, I'm not actually sure that I passed the link on to Dennis this afternoon.
You got it covered without him.
I believe I sent it. I believe I did send it to Dennis, so he
Oh,
should have it if he's
fantastic.
available.
Okay, yeah, he may have another meeting tonight. So we have recently released the county's housing action plan, and I've been doing a series of calls with different town boards. I was at Marbletown last week. I'm going to New Paltz next week. So really glad to see the level of interest in the plan. I'm going to try to just give you a brief overview. Let me see if I can share my screen. How's that? Can folks see?
Got it.
Okay. Seeing the slides now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just try to give you a brief overview of what we did, some of the data highlights from the study and the recommendations that we're making. And then, you know, I'd love to hear feedback, answer questions, you know, really, just think it's so great how engaged Woodstock has been with this issue so far. Deb Dewan has been serving both on our Housing Advisory Committee and your Housing Committee. So she's been really great at carrying information back and forth between the two, which was so helpful to us as we were working on the county study. And just really, really glad to see the level of engagement in Woodstock and you wrestling with these difficult issues. And we're just happy to support you however we can. So I'll start by just telling you a little bit about the origins of this study and the goals. We started talking about this between the county executive's office and the Economic Development and Housing Committee of the legislature immediately pre-pandemic. Because I started in January, I think it was at the February committee meeting that we were discussing this. And you know, everybody really recognized that there was a housing crisis within the county, and we had a little bit of a debate about whether we should, you know, do another study or whether we should jump right into solutions. And what we decided to do was really do both. So we did want to take a quick but as comprehensive as we could look at the data that's available out there. We didn't go out and do any survey work. We didn't collect any new data, but we did analyze the census and HUD data that we had available, as well as some of the county parcel sale data and what we could get from the multiple listing service. But then we wanted to really move quickly to trying to understand what's been driving our affordability crisis, really understand how it is spread across the county, how it varies from one part of the county to the other, and then get right into identifying strategies to increase our housing supply. And really ultimately recognizing that what it was going to take to wrestle with these issues is a community-wide conversation in every community in the county about how we can work together to address the crisis. And so we really see that as from our side kicking off now, although I know you and Woodstock have been grappling with this for some time now. So I just want to really acknowledge and thank the 9 individuals that served on our Housing Advisory Committee. These folks met with us and with Pattern for Progress, who did the study with us monthly from June to December, really contributed some great perspectives from their different positions in town government, the business sector, the real estate sector, the human services sector. So we really got a pretty broad look. And just really appreciate their dedication and thoughtfulness. So some of the key things that we observed in the data, I'm sure you're all aware that Ulster County's population is aging. One of the implications of this for housing is that I think a lot of those folks, you know, really want to age in community, but not necessarily in the homes that they're in right now. We found many folks are looking for, you know, looking to downsize, to move into something that requires less maintenance, is maybe more walkable, more in the center of town. And not only are we not meeting their needs, but also we're not able to free up the homes they're in now for younger folks and families getting started who for whom their homes might be just right. So that's one key piece of the housing puzzle for us. You know, we also found that the housing affordability crisis is really being driven by two somewhat separate things. The first is that over the past decade, pre-COVID, but you know, over the course of the supposed recovery from the Great Recession, incomes have really been stagnant or declining, except for the very highest earners. So on the one hand, people are earning less money, and on the other hand, housing prices and rents are continuing to rise. And so those two things are really putting the squeeze on our households, to the point that now nearly 1/3 of homeowners and more than half of the renters in the county are living in homes that are unaffordable to them by the standard that you should spend no more than 30% of your income on housing costs. So that's a really substantial fraction. And again, that's pre-COVID. So COVID has only exacerbated all of these trends. I think I'll move through the data fairly quickly. This is just an illustration of what's going on with our data. So the bottom bar in each pair is the 2010 data. The top bar is the 2018, and so you can see at the lower end of the age range, our population is shrinking, whereas in the 55 and older bands, that portion of our population is really growing substantially. So we found between 2010 and 2018, this is data from the US Census. The median income of renters was down 13% on an inflation adjusted basis, which is quite a drop at the same time where rents rose somewhat. And I know since 2018, rents have continued to rise. For homeowners, the drop in income was a little bit smaller at only 3%. So their incomes were really stagnant, but home prices have risen even faster. And of course, we all know that during 2020, they went up even faster still. This is a slide that has a lot of numbers on it, but it's so dramatic. I like to show it to people. So one of the ways that statisticians often summarize data after you get, beyond average and so on, is they break it up into what they call quintiles, which is, putting it in order and ranking it in fifths. And so a quintile is 1/5 of the population. And so here we've ranked the households by their incomes. And so the lowest quintile has the median income was $16,000 a year in 2010, falling to $14,000 a year in 2018. So that's a 14% drop. So the people who were earning the least, their incomes went down the fastest. Folks in the next quintile saw a 10% drop in their income. The folks who are really in the middle between 40 and 60%, their incomes fell by 4.5%. And it's only when we get to that highest 20% that they saw an increase in their income between 2010 and 2018. So, I think many of us had the sense that the recovery that we had in the past decade, the low unemployment rates and so on, was really concealing a lot of economic suffering, but this really made it very dramatic for me to see this, that those who could afford it the least saw the biggest decrease in their incomes. So another way to look at the income picture is to look at where we have the majority of our jobs in Ulster County. And so our biggest sector is public employees. This includes not just government employees, but all public school employees, SUNY Ulster, SUNY New Paltz. So that's just over 1/5 of our jobs. Their wages vary quite a bit, but the average is around $60,000 a year. That's insufficient to cover buying a home in Ulster County right now, and even to carry a lot of the rents in the county. And some of our other large sectors have even lower salaries. So healthcare and social assistance, again, a wide range, but an average salary around $43,000. Some of our fastest growing sectors in retail, accommodations, and food services with wages of $30,000 a year or lower. And manufacturing around $50,000. So when we look at where the preponderance of jobs are in the county, it's very challenging to pay the housing costs that we have today. One way that Pattern likes to summarize this is to talk about take a comparison of rents and wages of renters and use that 30% criterion for affordability to say how far from affordable are rents for our renters. So they started with what HUD calls the fair market rent. The way the Department of Housing and Urban Development works all its housing programs, they go out and evaluate in every area in the country what they think a fair rent on the market is. And again, this is 2018 data. So many folks, when I show them this slide, say, what? I wish I could find a 2-bedroom for that. But even if we start with what HUD believed our market was showing a couple of years ago, in order for that rent to be affordable using that 30% of income criterion, you'd need an hourly wage of $22 an hour. The vast majority of our renters are not earning that much, and the average hourly wage of a renter in Ulster County is $13 and change. So they could afford only an apartment rent at just over $700 a month. Or to put it another way, to earn the fair market rent, to afford the fair market rent of $11.55, someone earning that $13.33 would need to work 67 hours per week. And I know in talking with Deb and the other folks on the Woodstock committee, one of the comments that they heard that really struck me was from some organizations in town that rely on volunteers, saying our volunteer pool has really dried up, again, pre-COVID, because folks are now working 2 or 3 jobs, or they've had to move out of town, or, you know, in some other way, they just are not here with the free time that they had to contribute to the community anymore. And we're really concerned about how that's going to affect us. That's an aspect of the housing challenge I hadn't even really considered. And it was really eye-opening to hear that, but I think this slide really illustrates why that is. So just one more piece of data I want to show you, and this is really just to illustrate that the housing challenges, while they are everywhere in the county, they do also vary a great deal from place to place, and so it's really important to address these issues at the municipal level, where you can really be responsive to your needs. So within the Housing Action Plan, everywhere we can, we're breaking down data by municipality. Now, I will say that some folks have noticed that some of the numbers, especially for smaller demographic groups in their towns, look a little off. And I'll say that this data is coming from the Census American Community Survey data. Unlike the 10-year census that we just participated in, all the other census products are survey based. They select households to respond. It's not everybody. And so when we get into really small sizes and small samples, there can be really wide error bars on those. So we have to interpret the municipal data sometimes with a grain of salt, but I think it does really illustrate some of the trends in the county. So this is just looking, this left-hand map is showing you how that median household income varies across the county. And you can see it varies almost twofold, from around $40,000 a year to over $80,000 a year. And Woodstock is roughly in the middle, but that's, you know, 1/2 of that squeeze on households is their median income. The right-hand graph shows the percent of households that are what HUD calls severely cost burdened. So that goes beyond unaffordable to where you're spending more than 50% of your household income on housing, which, as you can imagine, once households are squeezed that much, they're really at a very unsustainable level, where they're really vulnerable then to crisis that can be induced by any unexpected medical bill or car expense or anything outside their monthly budget. And so this shows you that the percent of households that are severely cost burdened by that measure, again, varies dramatically across the county. And what I noticed about this, and the reason I put these two graphs side by side, is to show that the two communities that have the highest rate of cost burden households are the Village of New Paltz and the town of Gardner. And if we come over here and look at this graph, we can see that that the Village of New Paltz has one of the lowest median household incomes in the county. And of course, that's because of the substantial number of students who have low or no income. So that makes sense that there would be a lot of households that are spending more than half of their very small income on housing in New Paltz. But Gardner has one of the highest median incomes in the county. And for them, the housing challenge is just all about very high housing costs, that even with a high median income, they still have, you know, more than a quarter of their households who are really struggling to afford their homes. So just an illustration, again, of how much these challenges vary across the county. You know, populations of seniors, density of communities, there's so many things that make a difference across all our communities. So, you know, the county study is really the beginning for each community to then dive into what the situation in each community is. You all know this, COVID has just exacerbated all of this, and we've seen just a really dramatic rise in the median sale price, and even higher the average sale price, which is of course pulled up by the highest end of the market. So then we really tried to take a look at what is driving this, and what is making the cost of housing so high. And we observe that we have very low inventory in the county, and a large portion of that is that we've had very little new construction over the last couple of decades, except on the very high end of the market. So the average home that's been sold, new home that's been sold, is over $500,000, usually on large lots. And so we have a real mismatch in between the homes that have been built and the demand, what we started calling on the committee the missing middle, in order to really illustrate that this is not an affordable housing study. We don't have an affordable housing crisis. We have a housing affordability crisis across the whole range of the market, except for the very high end. So we're not serving young families. We're not serving, people even in the middle of their careers. People with good jobs are having a hard time finding homes they can afford. And our employers are telling us it's becoming a real issue for them to attract and keep talent. So, part of what we see is just that the cost of every aspect of development has gone up: materials, labor, land. Of course, we have infrastructure limitations. But the other thing that we have is a lengthy and uncertain approval process in many cases that really adds to the soft costs of development, and ultimately makes it harder to get things built. And this is partly, I think, in the way that we've set up our processes, and partly that those processes encourage or support a lot of community opposition to new construction. I grew up in the Hudson Valley. I moved away. I was in Maryland and North Carolina for a while, and came back 7 years ago. I'm really grateful that we have avoided here the sprawl that's really just dramatically transformed many places in this country. We set up the processes we have for good reasons, but they've become a bit of a blunt instrument for us in terms of some unintended consequences of keeping us from meeting the housing needs of our communities. So one of the strategies we're really recommending in the Housing Action Plan is taking a hard look at them and seeing where can we streamline this and where can we make it more transparent so that that they do what they're meant to do in terms of making projects better, but ultimately getting good projects through. So the strategies that we talked about and that we're recommending to increase the housing supply, first and foremost, really educating and engaging the community on how crucial this is. And again, that's where your committee has been doing such a wonderful job of hearing a lot of different voices on this and getting their voices out there. This is not just an issue of caring about our individual neighbors, although that's very important. It really is starting to threaten the health of our communities as a whole, to tear at the fabric of our communities and ultimately harm our economy. I think, many of us have traveled to places that have been transformed. Dennis and I were speaking with the County Board of Realtors a few weeks ago about this issue, and one of them immediately said, "Oh, out on Cape Cod, we spend a lot of time out there, and the people who work in restaurants, the people who work in hotels, the people who do healthcare services, the teachers, none of them can live in the communities that they work in. It's really transformed those communities. That's what we're on the road to if we don't act. So I think that leadership and engagement piece is first, and then there's all kinds of measures that our communities can take, and we lay out in the plan a menu of actions that we're recommending that municipalities take a look at and determine which ones are right for you. And the planning department, can certainly help you with working through these. So there are zoning and regulatory changes that can increase supply. One of the things we're recommending is that we try to move beyond the sort of project by project arguments that we tend to have about building, to have a proactive conversation about what do we need in our community, what kind of housing do we need, and where does it make sense to build it? what are our targeted priority areas for growth and what are our priority areas to preserve. And let's do this in a systematic and broad way, rather than waiting for developers to propose projects and then say, oh, I don't really want that there. We have looked at a process that's called scattered site redevelopment, where developers, especially developers of affordable housing using low-income tax credits, are now trying to get away from relying solely on large projects that are hard to site, and doing what they call scattered site, where they piece together a lot of small parcels with homes that either need rehabilitation or vacant parcels, where homes can be built that are that match the existing housing supply and their scale. We saw a really impressive project up in Schenectady, where the developer, in conjunction with the city and the land bank, had pieced together 30 different parcels and built a number of homes that looked like the 100-year-old single family homes in the neighborhood, but that were all purpose built as 3 apartment unit rentals. Streamlining the approval process we talked about, and then the other thing that we really need, we've been talking primarily about housing for households, but we also really need to increase our supply of supportive and transitional housing where folks can get services that they need in terms of mental health support, addiction recovery, and transitioning out of homelessness. We have a critical shortage of all those types of housing in the county as well. So what can municipalities do? As I mentioned, we've kind of packaged this menu of actions into what we're calling the Housing Smart Communities program. We modeled this on the state's Climate Smart Communities program, which I know Woodstock is a participant in. So it's a similar setup. There's a pledge to join, then there's a menu of actions to choose from, work with the community to go through that menu, choose the ones that are right for you, and then the county will make financial incentives available for communities that achieve certification in it. And part of that process is we'd like to support municipalities in creating your own housing action plan, where you would assess the needs specific to your community, look at where you have barriers to housing development, and critically do this step of proactively identifying where it makes sense to build and where to preserve. And the planning department is currently seeking a consultant who can help communities do that mapping work. Because we know you'll need financial support for that. So we're working on that. Out of that proactive mapping process, you can designate sites for housing development and release requests for qualifications, looking for developers to build the things that you want to see built there. The county's just gone through this process on Golden Hill on the site of the old jail. We're about to contract with the developer that we've selected. And we're happy to share our RFQ with you, which worked really well, and help you through that process. And above all, lead to engage residents, business, and community leaders on just how urgent it is that we work together to tackle this crisis and really form a very broad coalition that can be out there saying, yes, 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 let's build this, out of the consensus that the community has come to, and change the conversation around building in that way. So this is what the Housing Smart Communities Initiative menu looks like. I know I won't talk through all of these, but it's a real wide range of potential actions around zoning, approval, energy efficiency, housing rehab, short-term rental regulations, which I know you have. This is all mapped out in the Housing Action Plan, and we're happy to talk with you about it some more. So the plan is up on our website. I can put this link in the chat for folks, and the planning department is absolutely happy to talk with the town and help you in any ways that we can. So I'll stop there and happy to hear any feedback or take any questions.
Okay, so first I'm going to go to the board. Are there any board members that have any questions for Evelyn? Richard?
Thank you, Evelyn. This is the second time I've heard this or saw those numbers, and they're as frightening tonight as they were the first time I heard them. Evelyn, is there any way you can work with us? I noticed some of your figures, Woodstock being up at the high end. I noticed your average household, I think, was at 230 for the county, something like that. Where our assessor informs us we're over 600,000 in
Yep.
Woodstock.
Yep.
So I'd like to, I'd like to know how many jobs a person's going to have to work to rent an apartment here in Woodstock. But it'd be nice if we could break down. And I think our housing committee has been working on this too. But break down that quintile more specifically to our geographic area, specifically Woodstock. Also, you mentioned volunteers and the loss of volunteers, whether it's the fire department or coaches. There's also something else that's lost here, and with some of this that's been going on, and that's the loss of community, the loss of neighborhoods, the loss of neighbors, which make up that community, and that's a troubling trend as well. I don't know how you account for that in your numbers, but there's a very fundamental change going on in which the community loses.
Yeah.
But thank you for all of that.
Good.
I also just want to take a minute. I see that Dennis Doyle has also joined us, so you can put your questions to either Evelyn or Dennis. Laura, did you have a question?
Yes, two things. So one is, Evelyn, I'm hoping we get these charts because I never got the charts. I was there on the 22nd of February. I never did get the charts from that session. These are similar, and they're very, very powerful charts. And you did a fabulous job communicating what's what. So first of all, I'd love a copy of the charts. And secondly, I am the chair of Woodstock's Zoning Revision Committee, and we are currently fully focused on housing. And is it okay if I reach out to you? Because I may have some questions. And I would love to reach out to you for a couple of specifics of things you touched on, not to bore everybody here on this call, but I'd love to reach out one-on-one if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be glad to talk with you.
Okay, but excellent presentation and thank you.
So I would also suggest you reach out to the planning department as well, since we're going to end up reviewing your zoning changes.
Cool, Dennis. And you know, Dennis, as you may recall, Kathy Magarelli and I came to see you when we started the comp plan. We had the most wonderful conversation and you pointed us in the perfect direction. So I would love to, thank you for the offer. I will take you up on that as well.
Any other board members? So if anybody in the public, and I can't see the everybody on the screen. So if you would like to ask a question of either Evelyn or Dennis, if you just want to put your name in the chat, and Ashley can call on you, okay? Richard, did you have another question?
No, I was just punching up something. No, I'm good.
Okay. Anybody with questions?
Nobody in the chat.
Okay. Evelyn, Dennis, I thank you very much for coming to Woodstock. This is the second time I've seen this too. We had a great conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I look forward to continued conversation. I'll put it out there publicly. One of the things we did talk about that Evelyn brought up today was putting a coalition of different players together, business people, homeowners, renters, land conservancy in the town, and you know, trying to come up with consensus and solutions. And both Evelyn and Dennis have agreed to be part of that. So if there are folks out there who are interested in forming some kind of coalition, please reach out to my office. So
I just got a message from Elizabeth's iPad. I'm not sure whose that is, that they have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth. Is Elizabeth on?
Yeah, I was just unmuting myself, Bill.
Oh, okay.
One thing I'm struck by when I look at the new committee that Laura is leading and our zoning board and our planning board is how few women are represented on those boards. And I'm curious if there's any studies that show that perhaps a little more diversity might lead to a little more forward thinking.
Well, I'm sure, I'm sure it would. I mean, I'm not aware of any studies right here in Woodstock, but I can't help but think that it would. And I hope you'll throw your name in the hat there, because, you know, the last few times we've had to beat the bushes trying to get folks to come out to volunteer. So I absolutely agree that we need more diversity on these boards. So
Perhaps you should do a better job of publicizing them. For instance, you just reappointed someone to the Civic Design Commission who has no background in civic design. Perhaps you should actually try to seek out people who are qualified.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening. Any other folks have any questions for Evelyn or Dennis regarding the presentation?
Kevin Smith.
Kevin, go ahead, Kevin.
Hi, yeah, Kevin Smith. I've seen this presentation twice with Evelyn and Dennis, and then the presentation that the Land Conservancy co-sponsored with Evelyn and the Housing Committee. And I just want to say how important I think it is. Rich spoke to the loss of community, to the loss of cohesion, of relationships and people, and that when we talk about community, a healthy community and a vibrant community, there's all of these different components that are necessary in order to have a vibrant and healthy community, especially one that's going to last into the future. And so I think it's important to, I kind of think of it like a stool, you know, and you need to protect your natural environment and especially your natural resources, your water, the quality of your water and your habitat. We're very blessed in that regard, and you know, the community has been very strong in asserting that they don't want sprawl here, and they want to protect those things. But we also need to have the ability for people to live here, and that's also really important. And these things are intertwined. And now I think this presentation is really bringing home just how intertwined they are and what the cost is when that becomes unbalanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
I have Kirk, I think, put a question in the chat. And then I have Deborah Dewan and Tamara.
Okay, Kirk, why don't you unmute yourself and you can ask your question?
Yeah, the question I have for Evelyn is what is Ulster County doing to support the municipalities to collect rental data? I know that the evaluation of data requires accuracy of data, and otherwise it's very difficult to do analysis that's effective. And I just wanted to know what the county is doing going forward to support municipalities so that we can begin to collect the data rather than just relying upon landlords, but we're also able to collect information from tenants as well, or excuse me, people who are living in those same apartments. That's my question.
Yeah, Kirk, that's a great question. And, you know, we had looked with the committee, with the Woodstock committee at the county's annual rental housing survey data. And that's not a large enough sample size in order to get down to the town level. And really, you know, I think we had 2 or 3 properties in Woodstock in this past year's sample. It's really, it's difficult and expensive to do that kind of data collection well, and to do it well enough to really get quality data that can really inform you. So let Dennis and I talk about this a little. I don't know if we won't be able to expand the rental housing survey to the point where towns get high quality data out of it, I don't think. But there may be ways that we can help you do data collection within your town. And I think, you know, there's different ways to do it in a statistically valid way. It is very challenging and expensive, but you can also collect data in a way that encourages community engagement and conversation. so that you may not get statistically valid data that you could say compare year to year, but you could have some really qualitative benefits out of talking with people about their rents, you know, making an open call to come and discuss it. You can learn a lot that way that's not statistical, but is very informative. So that may be something to look at doing.
And from my perspective, you can look at this as an order of magnitude discussion. When you're looking at the numbers that you're looking at here, the statistically valid sample is something you always want to strive for, but an order of magnitude discussion, even with the ACS data, certainly helps. And then there are other things that also work in terms of concert with this, and that's the fair market rent that comes out from HUD. They do a statistically accurate sample. It's not done at the municipal level, it's done at the county level. But the difficulty is that is the update cycle for that. And what we're finding, just as a point of reference, what we're finding now is that the HUD fair market rent is no longer valid in Ulster County, given what's happened with respect to the pandemic. And we're starting to see people that actually have housing choice vouchers, which means that they can actually go out and seek an apartment where the federal government will pay the rent up to 30% of their income. They have to basically provide 30% of their income towards rent. They can't even find apartments to rent because the housing choice voucher is limited by the fair market rent, and there's nothing available within the fair market rent guidelines now in the county.
Deborah, did you have a question?
So I just wanted to point of information and thank you, Evelyn and Dennis, and I think the county set us on a good path, and also our own town comprehensive plan did as well, and with the formation of the housing committee in Woodstock, which is now just completed 2 years, which is hard to believe. Last year was a totally crazy year, and we're still continuing to meet with a lot of constraints, but we actually have I think a pretty diverse committee in terms of at least gender. We have, I think, 3 women and 2 men at the moment. We've gone up and down in numbers, but we've been working very hard trying to collect information about what other communities are doing that would fit the values and the sort of structure that was laid out in the comprehensive plan. And we've been now in conversation with the zoning revision committee to sort of align the work that we've done and the work that they're doing. So hopefully the town can move forward on these issues sooner than later, because obviously we recognize how important it is, and that we're in a crisis. We have to address it. So thank you.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you for being part of the county committee as well as our town committee.
So Bill, if I may, I just want to echo and thank Kevin Smith for his comments. And the reason for that is that the various constituencies that get represented, it's important to recognize that we need to reach across those constituencies and coalesce around the idea that we really are in a housing crisis, and also recognize that we can do both. We can build housing and save open space, and we can save open space for the community and for the people that live in it. And I think that's an important message, and it's an important idea that we bring all of these disparate stakeholders together and speak with one voice. Because I have to tell you, in all the time that I've been with the county and looked at the need for public policy change, what's happening in the housing market is something akin to what's happened with climate and what's happened with some of our other problems in the past. But absent a public policy change we can't, it's no longer sort of piecemealing around the edges. Absent a major public policy change, this thing just keeps getting worse and worse. And my sense would be is that communities like Woodstock can thoughtfully lead the way in making those changes, and we're here to help.
Couldn't ask for a better partner, Dennis, and you and Evelyn.
Hey, Bill, could I say one more thing and ask a question of Evelyn? How
Okay.
this fits with the Green New Deal in terms of the county housing action plan and the recommendations to retrofit existing housing to make more affordable housing and also for new housing, and how you see this being part of meeting that challenge, that existential challenge that Dennis just identified about climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I'm not sure everybody knows that part of your background, Evelyn.
thanks, Kevin. Yeah, actually, the reason I came to work with the county really is because I have a background in working on climate economics and energy policy. And so Pat asked me to come and lead the Green New Deal along with some of our other economic and environmental work. And we're currently working on a Green New Deal plan that's going to be released on Earth Day in April. And I would say there's a philosophical intersection, and then there are some practical ones. So, to me, the Green New Deal means tackling the climate crisis in a way that creates broad and equitable economic opportunity. And I think the analogy with the original New Deal is very apt, although the original New Deal had a lot of blind spots in terms of who it reached. But that sense that we meet crisis boldly by recognizing that all the work we need to do creates a great deal of economic opportunity. That's really the core of it. And so, a big focus in the Green New Deal is creating opportunity through high quality jobs, doing all the work we need to do to transition our energy system and protect our environment. But certainly making housing affordable for folks in our community is the other side of that economic challenge. So that's really the philosophical connection. Practically, I think one of the most important things we can do here locally, the work that absolutely has to be done locally to meet our state climate goals, is retrofitting virtually every building in New York State is going to have to be renovated in the next 20 to 30 years. That's the only way we're going to meet our emissions goals and get to climate stabilization. And we believe that eventually the state and hopefully the federal government are going to need to figure out how to direct large quantities of resources into doing that work, because it's not something that individual homeowners and landlords and renters can do themselves. It's expensive. It's absolutely worth it from an economic point of view, but it takes many years to pay off and it has a high upfront cost. And so a big focus of the Green New Deal is trying to do the job training work and where we can fund the project work to start doing this on whatever scale we can to build towards the day when, all of a sudden we're going to start doing it in a hurry. We have a small home weatherization and rehab program that we've been doing for many years with community development block grant funds. We do about 20 homes a year. We need to work at literally 100 times that rate to meet our climate goals. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory just did a study of the homes that the Kingston City Land Bank owns, where they did a really deep dive into modeling those homes for zero emissions and maximum energy efficiency. And they found that they could save an average of $200 a month on energy bills by doing this work, which makes a big difference then to those rents that we're looking at or those home ownership costs. So it's an important piece of the housing affordability puzzle for sure. And obviously everything that we build new has to be, fossil fuel free and ready for net zero emissions. And so another action that we're recommending in the Housing Smart Communities Plan is taking a look at building energy codes. Municipalities have the option to adopt energy codes that are more stringent than the state's minimum standards. And that's something we're also recommending that communities take a really hard look at.
And I would add to that that there's also a pattern of development that you need to consider with respect to Green New Deal work. Building at density is certainly one way, and every time we do density, we look at density discussions, and we start looking at people looking at pictures and saying, well, which ones would you like? Believe it or not, what ends up happening is the ones that are more dense, more village scale, are generally the most preferred type of development pattern, that as compared to large lot subdivisions in open areas. So that's one thing. And then the second piece of that, which is also in the climate, the Housing Smart Communities program, is making our housing stock work harder. And one of those ways that we can do that is actually encouraging accessory dwelling units, whether it be in buildings that are accessory to the unit itself or within the unit. Creating ADUs certainly is one way to essentially allow the housing stock to work harder to get two units for the price of one, so to speak.
Richard, question?
No, but I think Marta has something in there in the chat.
Tamara was next.
Okay.
Tamara, go ahead, Tamara.
I just wanted to add to something that Richard had said earlier about volunteerism and the dwindling pool of volunteers we have, and link it to community resilience in a different way. And Evelyn, I was so glad to hear you mention this in your presentation earlier. What we found at Family of Woodstock during this year of the pandemic is that people were really needing to do meaningful things during this time. And to have the opportunity to work on our hotline in Woodstock, even though they had to come on site. And as we had to build new ways of keeping a 51-year-old service running during a pandemic, the fact that we had so many volunteers who were dedicated to that work and found meaning during a time when many of us have struggled to really make sense of what's going on, was a wonderful gift for this, not only this town, but the county and the state, and frankly, the whole country, because we get calls from all over. So community resilience also plays a big piece in our ability to keep people engaged in meaningful work when we have opportunities for people and we lose that. And the other comment I wanted to make is about the committee that will, or the committee that needs to be formed to really look at this in Woodstock, and the fact that we really need voices from people who are low income, people who have had to leave our town because they can't afford to live here, even though their hearts are still here and they still travel here on a weekly basis because this is their community, to echo what others have said about community. And that's not an easy thing to ask someone who's of a lower socioeconomic standing to do, to come and speak about the difficulties of finding housing, of being able to stay in a community that you've invested in, that you're attached to, that you feel safe in. It's a big ask. So I really want us all to recognize what we're asking of people who have been stigmatized in our society, to come and speak for themselves and speak for their needs and speak for others. So
yeah. Can I just add to that, Bill, to what Tamara's saying? What's happening here in the pricing out of people for rentals, especially, basically we lose voices. We lose those diverse voices that make Woodstock, an interesting, shall we say, community. We may not always agree with those voices, but we're losing them. And so we do need to make an effort to reach outside of the town to a lot of the people that we've lost over the past few years.
So as in full disclosure, I was past board president of the Rural Ulster Preservation Company, otherwise known as RUPCO. And I can tell you that in the number of community events that we've held and invited those individuals that we were fortunate enough to assist, some of the most powerful messages I've ever heard were those individuals essentially expressing their appreciation for having a home a place that they could call home, either for themselves, for their children, or for their family. And it was just a really powerful message. And I think that, you know, the idea of essentially inviting those people into the decision-making process is something that we certainly tried to do at RUPCO as well. But if you ever have an opportunity to go to a community event with respect to that and listen to those individuals talk about their experiences and what being in a stable housing situation has meant to them, it's really uplifting.
Thank you, Dennis. Marta, did you have a question or a comment? You're good? Okay. Anybody else?
I had a question from Max in the chat. What is the number of housing units that would meet the need in Woodstock and in Ulster County?
Oh boy, Dennis, Evelyn.
There's something called, and we did this back in 2009. We took a look at what we would call fair share allocations, and try to establish fair share allocations via community. The difficulty with that is that the numbers are daunting, A, and B is it has a tendency to upset individual communities. So we made a conscious effort when we began this study not to do what we would call a fair share allocation with respect to need. But I can tell you that it's in the thousands. It's not in the, and in some instances on a countywide basis, it may be to meet the demands, to meet the backup demands, it's in the tens of thousands. But the point being is that we're trying to get no worse. If you start to think about of holding the line and not letting it get any worse, then you can start to think about numbers that individuals and families and communities can wrap their arms around. But one would hope that the state of New York would start to recognize this with respect to its other states actually do fair share allocations at a state level and break it down at a county level. And one would hope that the state of New York would head in this direction and start to think about this in this direction with respect to housing. The state of New York is probably one of the few states that don't have inclusionary zoning at a state level, where other states such as New Jersey and Massachusetts do. So one of the things you'll see in this report is some of the things that the state can do. We're not telling the state to do it, but some of the things that the state can do.
Thank you, Dennis. Any other questions, Ashley, in the chat?
Yeah, I have a question.
Susan?
Yeah. I wanted to cycle back just a little bit to the data. One of the big items challenging our rental picture in Woodstock particularly is the short-term rental business. And I know that the county has software that is sweeping, doing something, and I'm wondering if you could just tell us briefly the quality and the nature of that data. The Housing Committee hasn't seen that, we haven't asked for it, but we're talking about it and we don't really know what that is.
Dennis, I know a little bit about this process. You probably know more than me.
Okay, sure. The county looks at short-term rentals and it uses a company, and I'm not going to say the name of the company because I'll get it wrong, but I think what it does is it uses an algorithm to essentially sweep the web, and it looks at all of the various ads relative to short-term rentals, and it then verifies them. It actually goes through and identifies the location, uses pictures and geographic locating systems to actually identify and confirm that the location that they're looking at is actually the location that's advertised. And then that gets sent into our finance department, and our finance department is then in the process of mailing to try to collect taxes. And I think that's going to change, or has changed, because of various agreements we have with at least with Airbnb. But we're going to still collect the data because we think it's necessary to sort of manage the problem. When it first started out, it was a means to collect taxes. I can tell you that the planning department had numerous discussions, not with this administration, but with the former administration, as to that this wasn't just about collecting data to collect taxes. It was also understanding how many short-term rental units and what they meant with respect to the housing stock, the availability of the housing stock. And I would like to congratulate Woodstock for its short-term rental law. I think you folks were a leader relative to that short-term rental law. You took some bold moves with respect to restrictions on non-owner occupied housing. And that's certainly appreciated, and other communities throughout the county are starting to follow that lead.
Thank you, Dennis. And Susan, I do every couple of months get a report. So the next report I get from the Department of Finance, I can forward over to you.
Great, thanks.
The numbers are a little off because everybody wants to be in Woodstock. So we will have, West Hurley or Glenford, so the numbers are a little higher, but they're fairly accurate.
Mhm. It's just, it puts a lot of pressure on long-term rentals. And I think it's a critical piece to look at in Woodstock. Thanks. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, I would say that the county planning department early on took a very bold position with respect to short-term rentals, and in our review of short-term rental regulations have been pretty consistent now for about 4 years, where we've essentially recommended caps or prohibitions on non-owner occupied housing, as well as a means to essentially control those issues that affect the quality of life issues. That doesn't mean that we don't support short-term rentals. We believe that they have a place in the county, in particular in certain areas of the county, in certain locations. They make all types of sense. And even in particular areas, for example, you can start to think about short-term rentals as an area where you may want to consider them if you have a blighted area in your community and you can invest in that area, or it makes no sense to invest in that area on the basis of the residential value, but it does make sense in the area to invest on the basis of a commercial value. So you start to see that we certainly support those kinds of moves to remove blight and to essentially increase economic activity. It's when we start seeing housing stock really being impacted, where choices are being made or values are being established on investment value rather than on a residential value, that you really want to think twice about how your regulations impact.
And when we adopted our regulations, the board agreed that, in a year, 2 years, we would circle back around and take a look. So last month, Councilman Hepner took up that charge again. I think he's actually recruited the original committee. So they're, taking a look at what we may be able to tweak and do a little better and change. So I'm sure they'll be reaching out for some thought from you on that as well. Richard, did you want to add anything on that note?
No, we're just getting started. So, like you said, we had promised to take a look at it. We're taking a look at it, and, we'll be bringing stuff back to the board. We'll have some people in, we're just getting rolling. So, give us a couple of weeks here and we'll see where we go.
Excellent. Any other questions from the board, any of the board members of the public? Ashley? Going once?
I have, Urena said, what about the enforcement of STRs?
I know that
That's all going to be, that's all part of the review.
And I do know that I can tell you that there are letters going out to folks who are not doing it legally, because I'm getting calls, a couple calls a week from people who actually they registered with the county to pay sales tax, their pillow tax, and they thought they were fine. And we said, no, you were informed you needed to register with the town. So I know that is going out there and people are being challenged to shut down. So, okay, any more questions on this topic? If not, Evelyn, Dennis, thank you very much for all this hard work. Thank you to your committee, and in particular, Woodstock's own Deborah Dewan. I look forward to continuing to work with you guys. I think this is probably the most important issue we're facing. From the first I got elected in supporting RUPCO and getting that project to completion, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. We need to keep going. So thank you for all the help you've done and all the help you're going to offer in the future. So
Thanks so much, Bill. And I'll send my presentation to Ashley so it can be circulated.
Okay, and I've already got a couple of texts in from different people who are interested in being part of a group that meets. So I'll, in the next couple of weeks, try and put that together, and maybe we can start to have a dialogue with the different constituencies.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Dennis.
All right. The next item that we have on the agenda is the Police Reform and Reinvention Initiative and the report. So we were presented with that last week. We did talk a little bit about it. Does anybody on the board have any questions, thoughts, comments?
Well, tonight we're accepting it, right? I mean, is that basically?
Well,
you want
but
to
we're
explain
having,
it?
we're going to have a public conversation. You know, if anybody has any comments, this is the time to have the comment. And then at the end of it, the hope would be to accept it.
I have one or two comments, if I may.
You may.
So certainly thank you to everybody who was part of the subcommittees, because it was a very thorough document, covered a lot of areas. And so I know, I think I'm probably not alone in saying, you know, there's going to have to be some follow-on work to take a look at the recommendations, because there's a lot of recommendations. But certainly I know Reggie at a previous meeting thanked everybody on the committees and subcommittees, and I hadn't yet looked at the document, but having looked at it, I want to add my thanks to those who were so diligent and cared so much to put so much into that.
Thank you. You know, and we did thank the committee last week, but I also want to reach out and thank one other individual, Jackie Manganero, who was not an original member of the group, but I know worked very hard with the group, spent a lot of time, and did actually produce a very enlightening document on ADA compliance around town that didn't make it into this report, but I think it's something that the town, a topic that we should be taking up and dealing with. And while it's not part of this report, I'd like each of the board members to take a look at it and consider it as we move forward.
And Bill, maybe we could even in the coming, you know, maybe even next month or the coming months, have Jackie come speak to us to give her a little time to speak to us.
I'm fine with that at the next meeting.
Okay, I'll reach out to her.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great, Reggie. Either meeting in April would be fine.
Okay,
I'll
great.
leave it to you to work out with her.
Will do.
So, any other comments from the board?
I guess what I was getting at, Bill, is we're accepting the report, but there's going to be more work done on it, and we have to send it off to Albany, I know.
So we are accepting the report as a document. It will get forwarded to Albany to comply with the governor's executive order. I will be appointing, in consultation with the board, a committee of 5 to review the recommendations and prioritize and, you know, see which ones really make the most sense and which ones fit. And also to look at funding and how we're going to pay for a lot of this. So what I'd like to, I'll appoint that committee at our next meeting. But yes, this is a start. This is not we're done.
Right.
Now the real work begins.
Correct.
So then that committee will bring back to us what they think is most important to get going on, and
yes,
basically. Okay.
I
And we will
mean, I can tell you right now that I think that, and I think he already sort of has, but the accreditation I think is a no-brainer. And you know, I've said, Clayton and I have talked about this for a couple of years, and you know, I've basically said to him, look, we've got to get moving on this. So I don't even think we need to wait for the committee to come back. I think that, you know, if you guys are in agreement, I think we should just instruct the chief to get that ball rolling and at least get an understanding of what we need to do to achieve that.
And there's some other things, you know, like for example, the website, like I talked to Bill about that before the task force is formed. I'll be working with Ashley and the chief on the website. So there's some things that can just happen very quickly, but there are other things that are going to take more research and dialogue with the board also.
Yeah, that's what I was
asking,
forward. Basically. What, Reggie, so the task force brings this stuff back, but we will have, as a board, input into that as well, right?
Of course, yes.
Absolutely.
This won't be,
No, I think I mentioned to Reggie on a phone call, you know, there's some things in the hiring practices I'd like to see added, you know, stuff like that, you know.
listen, again, I would encourage and hope that the town board is, you know, read this document, is going to reread it and keep reading it and make recommendations as we go, even prior to a task force coming back with their own recommendations. So please feel free to reach out if you have more on the hiring, Richard.
Yeah.
There is a new policy at the back that Clayton.
No, I saw that.
outlined.
There's a couple things, you know, like preferring, for example, somebody with bilingual background. You know, I see things as required and preferred, and you know, we want to look at the education level, that type of stuff.
Okay. All right. Any more comments from the board? Do we have any comments from the public? Tamara, do you have, you were co-chair. Thank you for your efforts. Maria Elena, did you raise your hand?
No, I didn't raise my
Oh,
hand.
okay, sorry.
I have Joseph's iPad
Hello, Jose.
has a question.
Hey, Bill, it's Joe Zarnecki.
Yes.
I have a question on the dumping on Church Road.
Oh, no, Joe, we're working on the police reform. We're having a public.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We'll get to that later.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. We'll get to it. Any members of the public have any comments, questions, concerns, issues, praise for the report?
No, thank you for Reggie.
Linda, do you have a question? Unmute yourself.
I did. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
The Cultural Change and Youth Subcommittee mentioned 50 pending evictions in town. Can you speak about that?
You know, I have not heard back from the court as to whether the accuracy of that, so I can't.
Okay. If you do, will you?
If I get an answer, I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, well then, if we're done with that, I'll move on. So the next topic was the building moratorium. So as I mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, Richard and I have worked a bit. We have crafted the framework for a local law, which is what a moratorium would require. I did get some feedback. I do need more clarification though. You know, some of the feedback I got was what we would permit with a moratorium, and it really needs to be a little bit more specific as to what we wouldn't be permitting. You know, for instance, one of the examples I got was development not in keeping or in line with the 2018 comprehensive plan. And that's just a little too vague for a moratorium. So again, if the board, the housing committee, zone revision committee, where's Terry and Mark, the neighborhood committee, if there's any more feedback with more specifics about that, I'm all ears. And in the meantime, Richard has one copy of it, and he and I are continuing to tweak away. Board have any questions, comments? No? Public? Anybody want to address this topic?
Just so we're clear, Bill, I just saw what you started up today, so I haven't.
Yeah,
really,
no.
I haven't looked at it,
but some of it was input that you know we've talked about over the last week.
Yeah.
Yes,
and also from the housing group and from the neighbors group and things like that.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to move on to resolutions.
Are we going to take from the public or what?
I did. Nobody.
Oh,
I
okay.
asked before. Nobody's got any questions. Okay. Be resolved to accept minutes for meetings held on February 16th and March 9th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah,
Be
and
resolved.
there were some comments there, Jackie, as always. Some comments on the minutes.
Be it resolved to accept the town clerk's report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Be it resolved to authorize payment of audited vouchers in the amount of $62.43.
It's to the, I would like to do that total frame. How long does?
Hold on. Hey, yeah, thanks, Mark and Terry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Be it resolved to authorize transfers per transfer sheet.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Be it resolved upon receipt of a completed Family Medical Leave Act form to approve a paid unpaid leave of absence for Ashley Slavinsky effective on or about April 1st, 2021.
Second.
What do you need a leave for, Ashley? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we'll miss Ashley because Ashley is wonderful.
It's only going to be 8 or 10 weeks. But we will miss her.
Wait a minute. Was that April 1st?
Yes.
What?
On or about.
Okay.
On or about.
Ashley, what?
I have a bit of a range.
I'm gonna miss you a lot.
Thank you. Y'all know how to reach me.
That's true. Be it resolved to hire Anthony Marciano as grade 3 full-time laborer for the water sewer department at a rate of $21.87 effective April 6th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Be it resolved to appoint Graydon Yerrick as alternate member to the Commission of Civic Design, term to expire 12/31/23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Be it resolved to appoint Catherine Tejan as a member of the Housing Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I just want to say something there, Bill. Catherine was going to be here tonight, but unfortunately, her husband had an skiing accident. So
Hope he's
she
okay.
She apologizes, but we wish her husband well.
Yeah, send her our best. Be it resolved to adopt the proposed plan of operations in the event of a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease. Don't know why we would need that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second discussion.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about any changes you put in there, or
You mean the Trump clause?
the Trump? Yeah, there's the Trump clause.
I'm going to let you explain that one.
Oh, the Trump clause simply is there was a point where the supervisor is supposed to declare the emergency, and I just wondered if we ever had a science denier supervisor in the future, that maybe he can't do so without the board approval or without approval from the board. So that's the
Well, actually, more to the point is that if the supervisor didn't declare it, the board
Right,
could do
that's
so
the
by
point, yeah.
resolution.
Exactly.
So
I thought I saw that.
Not that you're a science denier, Bill. I'm not
no, I
saying
know you were quite clear when you brought it up to me, and I didn't argue the point.
Yeah, I thought I saw that in there in the latest copy we had, right?
It is, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
That
it's
change
in
is
there.
made.
I think it's in there. I didn't go
It
back.
is, I promise you.
Sorry.
You know, it's interesting because we've been doing this for a year, basically. This is all with regard to this pandemic, and at this point, it's old hat, although a lot of it does change on a regular basis. In fact, we'll probably end up going back in and making some adjustments with regard to, quarantining time and whatnot. But it's a good basis, and the plan does repeatedly say, refer to the latest guidance from the CDC. So.
Could you, since we're talking about this pandemic, where are we with vaccinations in town?
Actually, let's just vote and then we can move on to that. Any other questions about the plan? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I haven't done a calculation lately, Richard, but about 2 weeks ago, I estimated that we were well over 25% when the rest of the county was below 20.
No.
Somebody say no?
Oh, I was talking to the mud dog.
I thought you were disagreeing with me. Okay. So, you know, my best guess is that we're a good chunk over 30% of the town being vaccinated. So, you know,
Okay.
part of that, God bless Neil Smaller, and when this is all over, we're going to do something nice to honor him and thank him for his efforts. And also, you know, we are an older community, and the older community was the ones to get the vaccines first. So, you know, there were a couple of different things that came into play there. But,
I would just add, and I know we all got kind of a version of brain fog almost. It's been a year, and like you said, and along the way, a lot of people have contributed to the community, and certainly Neil is one of them. But if we're gonna, I think we should plan on a broad type of, I don't know, honoring, if that's the verb. A lot of people, you know, there's a lot of people help get us through this.
Yes, you know, I'm continually blown away by our community. You know, right from the very start, when folks were volunteering to do shopping and delivering meals and
Making phone calls,
calling our seniors.
right, calling
Maria
seniors.
Elena did a great job leading that,
Mhm.
and still is. And you know, just calling these folks for 5-10 minutes during the day is a godsend. So
Well, also the massive food distribution that people like Emily and the table did,
Table
and
at
other
Woodstock.
people, you know, all that, you know, I know it seems like ages ago, but it's been, you know, it's all part of the
all
same.
the
It's all part of the
restaurants.
same thing.
Yeah, a number of the restaurants stepped up, and with the Project Resilience, and yes, they did get paid a small amount for their meals, but it wasn't like they were making a ton of money on this, and a lot of it was coming out of love. So love for the community, and we live in a special place. There's no doubt about it. So with that, last resolution for the evening, be it resolved, the Woodstock Town Board received the report from the Woodstock Police Reform and Reinvention Committee. Be it further resolved, the Woodstock Town Board thanked the committee members for their time and efforts in creating said report. Be it further resolved, the Woodstock Town Board authorized the supervisor to forward the report to the New York State Division of Budget as required by the Governor's Executive Order 203. Be it further resolved, the supervisor will appoint a committee consisting of 5 members to review the reports, recommendations in consultation with the town board and make suggestions to the town board regarding implementation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Reggie, great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
I know it was a task. And
yes, that is an understatement, but thank
yeah.
you.
And thank you to everybody, the committee, all the volunteers, all the members of the public that came out. And again, thank you to Jackie for her contributions. So,
and one more time, thank you again. Huge thanks to Ashley. Could not have made it through to the end of this without your help. And Tam, if you're still on the call, thank you again so much. And to the chief also, who had an open door from the start of this and continues to do so. So thank you.
So Ashley, how the book that Clayton gave you months ago, the policy book, how many pages was that?
Oh, I didn't even count. I didn't want to know.
She didn't want.
Got to be over 1,000 though, right?
It got to be over 1,000.
So, you know, Clayton shows up with this manual with all the policies, and it had never been formatted on a computer. So Ashley spent weeks typing away in between doing all her other tasks. And, you know, brought the police department into the 21st century in that respect. So thank you for that as well.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I know I'm late to the game, but it all happened so quickly. I had a moratorium question.
Yes, go ahead.
So considering how important the board thought this moratorium was last meeting, I'm wondering what the timeline is. All I heard you say, Bill, is that you don't have enough input, but how is this all going to unfold?
Well, I've put a whole draft law together, and I just need a little bit more input, and then it will go to either an attorney or a planner to review it. And that,
Yeah.
You want to explain that process, Bill? Because I'm not sure people understand about. the
so a
county.
moratorium is basically an amendment to the zoning law, and it's creating a local law. It's not a quick process. I thought I did touch on this a little last week or 2 weeks ago, but it requires going to our count. First off, we have to come up with a draft law, which has to go to our planning board and the county planning board for their review. Hopefully that they'll move that through pretty quick, but that could take up to 45 days. At which point then the town board will hold a public hearing on it. And so adoption is 2 to 3 months away. Any other questions? Did that answer your question, Terry?
Thank you.
That was it? Okay. And I don't know if you heard earlier, but some of what what's lacking in what I've drawn up are real hard specifics about what this moratorium would affect. And it needs to be pretty specific. It can't, like one thing, the example I used, it said something about development that does not conform to the 2018 comprehensive plan. That's just far too vague, according to the two attorneys that I've spoken with. We need to have more specific language as to what we're talking about banning. For instance, when Hurley did it, they talked about, let me just see if I can pull it up real quick. Give me 1 second.
Want to go poop? Come on, everybody poops.
What?
Come on, let's poop. Come on, guys, let's go.
Rose, can you mute yourself?
Yeah, I will, boss.
Thank you. So the town of Hurley talked about a moratorium on multifamily dwellings and multi-dwelling complexes. So it was very specific to that type of development. So, any other questions? Joan?
Yeah, this is also about the moratorium.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying, Bill, that it might be 3-4 months, right? Before anything concrete.
It's a slow process, yes.
So my concern, of course, is that the movement towards the sale of the funeral home, the Lasher funeral home property, I'm concerned about which comes first, the moratorium or the sale.
Unfortunately, there's no way to short circuit it. I mean, there is the legal process that we have to follow, and if we don't, then the moratorium will not stand up in court.
So we have to wait for the moratorium, and then if the sale has not gone through, that would stop any further sale progress.
Correct. Well, it wouldn't stop the sale. I mean, anybody can buy and sell property. So a moratorium, you can't stop the purchase. But it would suspend any possible development for up to 9 months.
Well, and Bill, as you point out, it's going to be the specifics. So first of all, Bill has not yet completed the moratorium law. You heard Bill say he's looking for input on specifics, and from the input he gets, from that, the moratorium law will be developed, and then it'll go through the process. So once the moratorium law is adopted, then any building after that point will have to abide by the moratorium. The moratorium will say, well, here's what you still can do, here's what you can't do during the time that could be a 9 months time of the moratorium. So there are some unknowns so far because, first of all, the moratorium law is not built yet. The belief is that there will be some things still allowed. Like if you're a private homeowner, you would still be able to, you want to put a garage on your home. I expect the moratorium law will let you do that. If you want to maintain your home, I expect the moratorium law will let you do that. There'll be some things, we keep talking about community versus commodity. I believe that the hope of the moratorium law is to say, let's put the brakes on some of these things that's making Woodstock a commodity, because to care about the citizens of Woodstock, we need to care about community. So there are a bunch of unknowns in terms of what's going to be in the law. Bill's laid out the process of how long it will take. Whenever the law is adopted, then whatever building happens from that point forward, whatever is not yet approved, would have to abide by the law. So that's my belief is, people are going to buy and sell, as Bill says, but if you're going to build after the law becomes adopted, you will have to abide by the law. But as Bill's also pointed out, the law is not yet drafted because he's looking for input. So there are a bunch of unknowns here, but it is what it is. But I think we know what the intent is.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Bill, do you want to get into some specifics? I don't know if Kirk's here, but I had a question on the housing committee letter.
Sure.
Kirk, you here?
Yes, I am.
And I didn't want to interfere with, even though I'm your liaison. I think these types of things should come from the housing committee and not be influenced by town board members while you're doing it. But you did mention something about stopping all variances. Is that how I read that?
Well, no, there was not any specifics on all. No, the word all was not mentioned.
Because that's where Bill's talking about, we gotta get specific.
Right.
Somebody has to move a fence a half foot because of a telephone pole. That's one thing.
Right, of course.
Those are the types of things we need to clarify.
Yeah, and I think that our main request is that we engage with the land use planner, and when the writing of the law is written, that we might be able to then see some of the details there and add some level of that we feel might be missing from that. And that was what we were hoping for, is a cycle there.
Okay.
But we also, the attorney or the land use
planner
needs to have guidance. I mean, they're not going to make this up. We need to say, look, this is what we need to stop this type of development or that type of development.
Right. And I think that for us, we wanted to get specific, but we also did not want to put the law in jeopardy for discrimination.
Right.
So this is where the fine line is.
Well, I would suggest everybody get specific, responding to the supervisor and to Richard, and we can kind of cobble something together and then get it off to an attorney who can polish it up.
Well, then let's talk about what the committee gave you, and we can get specific there. We will get specific. Okay. We have a meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
So let's pick it up then if we can.
Okay.
Bill, you want to get back to us about that?
Excellent.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Terry and Mark, I'd say the same. Ask the same of you guys. I mean, and the Kirk's meetings are open to the public. If you wanted to join there and be part of that conversation as well, that would be fine. What time is the meeting, Kirk?
5 o'clock till 6:30. Yeah. And if people want to come, you can ask Ashley for entry, and she'll send you the invitation to the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
They're a fun committee.
Thanks,
hard-working
Richard.
committee.
Yes.
No, they do incredible work. It's actually a working
And now
committee.
there's
that's for sure.
6 women and 2 men.
Yeah.
Bill, I just wanted to say a word if I might.
Who's talking? Sorry.
Marta,
Marta, how are you? Okay, go ahead.
Find the little hand. I just wanted to announce that a number of us are responding to the news that the Woodstock Way would like to purchase the Lasher property and have interest in developing it. And many of us are extremely concerned about this and are coming together in the next few days to just kind of sort out our options. But we take it very, very seriously. And I just wanted you and everybody else in this meeting to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And which is why I'm here tonight. And I was very interested in the housing discussion you know, and just trying to see if we can weave solutions together. But certainly that open space is, you know, something I will work very hard to preserve, and I know others will too. And let's see what we can do.
So this is the crossroads that we're at, where we have a terrible, terrible need for affordable housing, affordable rentals. And unfortunately, the best place to put them is in the hamlet. And folks who live in the hamlet are, you know, very interested in maintaining what open space they have. So it's going to be a fine line.
Absolutely. And it's not that I want to preserve it for my own sake. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I am. And
no, I mean, I know you want it more or less as much as I do. It's our town. It's our beautiful land. But anyway, I just wanted to speak up on behalf of that, and hope to be in this discussion further as we move forward.
Well, and I don't know if you and the other neighbors heard, but when Evelyn and Dennis were giving their presentation, one of the things, when I met with them a couple of weeks ago and had a discussion about this, you know, I'm really proud and honored that they came to Woodstock first because they wanted our input before they started rolling this out to all the other communities. Because we've been dealing with it, because we've had a housing committee for 2 years, because we've struggled with housing for years. So they, you know, they valued our input. And one of the things that came out of that was, you know, we all agreed there was a great need to have a diverse group of residents, business people, property owners, folks who can't afford the rent, and the town government to get together to start a dialogue. And actually, Kevin, I think is gone now, but well, you know, also include in there the Land Conservancy. Oh, there he is. You know, and put all these groups together and try and come up with solutions to our problems. So, somebody else have their hand up? Your hand
Bill?
up? Yep.
Yeah, so I just wanted to echo, kind of like follow up with what you're saying. I was going to say something to that too. What was great, I like about Evelyn's and Dennis Doyle and their point of view with the presentation. And then our meeting, or when they presented with the Woodstock transitions and the Land Conservancy, invited us, the housing community there. And they kind of talked about being proactive. And I know she talked about it tonight again. And I think that's really important. I think Kevin Smith was saying something about that too. But, and you've said something, but I think the solution has to do with somehow, if we can come, think about being in Woodstock, is you might be on opposite ends of a fight or an argument or a discussion or a point or an issue in town. But if you wait long enough, you'll be on the same side of another one.
Absolutely.
And that's when you start to like get to know each other better and respect, you know, and kind of formidable enemies, but now you're, you know, working together. And I wish that we could somehow find a way to work with some of the builders or the developers or folks in town that are eager to kind of do commercial and building. And that's great. We need that. But if we could work together and maybe find that similar value, and that's where I think the community comes into play. But I think she was trying to say, like, promoting people working together. And
Right.
unfortunately,
has to happen.
yeah, unfortunately, for about 6-7 years now, it's just been about high end, you know, everything, like whether it's a restaurant or the buildings, the, you know, short-term rentals, it's everything is just out of reach, literally out of cost reach for anybody.
Yes.
So I just want to say one last thing. I was on Sunday at a restaurant. It was a beautiful day. I was outside, and it was really nice to talk to my neighbors that are, you know, new neighbors in terms of the tables around me. And they were new, and one couple lived here for a year, et cetera, et cetera. But I saw the wait staff, the person who's my waiter, and I've seen him do, you know, waiting at other restaurants around town. And it was sort of like I hadn't seen him for a while. And I said, how you doing? You know, I think of these people that leave town because they can't afford to live here as disappearing faces.
Mhm.
And a lot of the new people don't really know who they are because they just haven't been here long enough.
Right.
But anyway, and he says, well, I live in Socrates now. I can't afford to live here and I can't afford to eat here. So I just come to work and then I leave immediately because I just can't afford to be in this town. And that's sort of a shame. And he's a single dad. And I feel like that's not fair. You know, I feel like we all in a balance together here.
So look at that report that we just got from Dennis and Evelyn, and you know, Woodstock is in a terrible shape, but the rest of the county is going the same way. And, you know, soon he's going to have to be up in Greene County.
Yeah.
So
well, we're like
we've all got to
second
work
behind. Yeah.
to change that. And, you know, I will say that at our last meeting, and I said I'd probably get a few folks mad at me, but we really do have to stop putting the developer as the evil empire. And we really have to try to work with them to incentivize them to do the type of development we need. It's a partnership, and we have to partner with them, I believe. And we have to partner with the Land Conservancy and all the other constituencies to make this happen. So, Richard, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, he's on mute. But Bill, I did see that Jesse and Ryan put in the chat they'd like to be able to respond to comments, which is the Cindy Halliburton Square, but it's got Jesse and Ryan in it.
Okay. You guys have a
Hello,
comment?
everyone. Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I think what we would like to do is have an open dialogue with everyone, and different from the first time we went for our approval, we didn't start with an open dialogue, and maybe that was a mistake on our part. But I hope that some have felt that we've become good neighbors. But nevertheless, in this particular case, you know, we've reached out to all the contiguous neighbors and also to the town, and we want to work with you guys. We want to hear what. That's why we're here now. We want to hear what is important to Woodstock. We definitely have we've made donations to, you know, many good causes in this town, and we will continue to do that. But I think it's important that a line of communication is open. I heard Marta say that she was, you know, she was concerned, and I want to hear your concerns, and I think I can speak for both Ryan and I that we're open to discussing. I mean, tomorrow we're going to be staking out the corners of the buildings that we thought would be good for that particular property for everybody to see. We only learned about this today, but we're sending an email out to everybody to come meet with us on Friday and potentially walk the property with us and see what we had planned to do. So, yeah, if anybody has any questions, we're happy to, or concerns, we're happy to discuss.
I have a question.
Please.
In response to Marta's statement about being concerned about the open space, Bill said, well, here's the rub, we need affordable housing, but we don't want to lose our open space. Do you propose to have affordable housing on that site?
So it's a very good question. It wasn't a part of our plan. And I don't know that, given the fact that we're only developing 5 homes in the residential portion of it, that we would be required to do that. What I will tell you is that we've already created workforce housing and are open to creating workforce housing in and around in and around Woodstock. One being on Near Street. We have a studio that you know, we actually have one of our employees housed there, and she actually doesn't pay rent at this time. So that's as affordable as it gets. That's one. Two, you know, I have a home out on West Socrates Road as a accessory home, as an accessory potential workforce house. I would be willing to develop something there that would work. And yes, for 100 Tinker Street, we would also propose another workforce house for somebody to live and work in Woodstock. Does that answer your question?
I think there's a difference between affordable housing and workforce housing, but that's something that I think could be clarified by someone who's more professional, you know, in this area of definition. But affordable housing to someone who, go ahead. Sorry. Was someone trying to speak about that? No. Anyway, I think there's a difference between what I'm saying about affordable housing and workforce housing. If anyone else feels that there's a difference there. You know, if it's people who are working for your company, that's not affordable housing for the community. It's a different thing in my understanding of the term, but I could be wrong.
Allison, did you have a question? Allison, did you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Speak a
Yes.
little louder.
I don't want me. Oh, I wasn't sure if I was muted or not. I was wondering why we were not floating the idea of leaving the meadow alone behind Lasher's alone as one of the last bits of open space in town, and maybe if someone was capable of redoing the Lasher's building as affordable housing or artist housing, which would be in keeping with the spirit of the town.
Sure. So I could say this is tomorrow, I think everybody will see that we are not planning to cover a lot of that land. There's still going to be an open meadow between what we're proposing. And there's still going to be the ability to even be on Tinker Street and look through these buildings and still see through to the mountains and the meadow. And you know, I think we took the time to actually honor the land, and not overdevelop it. That was the idea.
You know, and guys, I'm Ryan Giuliani. Thanks for taking the time and listening to us. You know, one of the things that a couple of people heard when they first came onto the property last week was when this was first presented to us by the Peterson family, there were two other investors within our group. Once we figured out and were told by other townspeople what could be developed there, which is significant, you know, with the current setbacks for multi-housing development, something like 84 units can be developed onto that property as of right. Our investors or potential investors wanted to do that very much so. We did not. That's not where we were coming from at all. We had them, we asked them to leave the deal, and we wouldn't want to be working with them. And our goal was to develop the land in a way that we could bring in new housing, though not affordable, market value, plus the expansion of our business. You know, our business is the hotel business. There is a concern of STRs and Airbnbs, which laws are in place now. And, you know, we truly fear that our business is the middle of the road for this community. You know, there are the STRs when Airbnb was at a larger portion, you know, the small businesses do very well because of the tourism that comes to this town. With the regulation of STR, you know, it takes away from the small businesses. Our hotel project, you know, helps that again, because it allows people to come to this town, stay in this town, and spend money within the town. You know, our goal with this second development here is, you know, figure out a way that we can work with the community, benefiting the community itself, benefiting our business, and being able to create jobs within the local community and town. And, talking about workforce housing, the individuals that take advantage of our workforce housing are local people. So it does benefit them. And we hope that, on the 100 Tinker Street project, we'll be able to create more of that. The idea that, the field, if it's us developing it or someone else, that it can just stay a field, I don't know if that's really feasible. I mean, the home is not being sold to be just an open field or affordable housing or a single residence at that matter. It's an expensive piece of property, and there's a fiscal need to do something with it to make the investment seem right for anyone that's coming in.
The highest and best use. And I understand where you guys are coming from. Allison, I did want to also add to the fact that the period detail of the home, of the current main house on the property, is one that we plan to match. We're going to try to provide renderings for everyone to see and to make comment on. But it's our intention to try to match the period detail of that home that was built in 1884.
Bill, would it be possible for these gentlemen to identify themselves, please?
I'm Jesse Halliburton.
And as I said, my name's Ryan Giuliani.
Thank you.
We're the owners of the Woodstock Way Hotel.
Okay. With that, I'm going to put the floor for one more question or comment from somebody who hasn't said anything yet.
Anula has her hand up.
Yep. Go ahead, Anula.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I was a little bit late tonight, kind of working a lot of hours these days, but thank you. I'm glad that I'm able to squeeze in here. I have a comment and a question. My comment is somewhat related to what Kate had mentioned. I do view workforce housing for really important people who need to stay near a property or stay in town as very different than affordable housing. And that kind of transitions to my question. There are so many successful models in this country where developers are building these beautiful homes. They charge whatever they would like for those homes, and yet they mix in affordable housing. You can't really tell one from the other, and I'm wondering why that's not being looked at for Woodstock.
The one question I would ask is, how big are these developments that you're talking about?
Different sizes. Georgia, you go around this country and folks are building little private communities, but they're taking a small percentage, and what they do is they offset the profit from lowering affordable housing.
I understand the model, but the question is, and I think it's a good model, but I think these are typically bigger projects where you have 10, 12, 20 homes to make that up.
So how many homes are part of the plan?
Not necessarily, Bill.
How many?
5 at this point.
5. There's no plan to expand, like there's going to be a cut at 5?
Yeah, that was our intention, was to, again, honor the land and keep as much open space as possible. I mean, these homes are, what you'll find when we stake them out, they're 1,500 square feet each, and we planned 3-bed, 2-bath homes.
Are you going to put an easement on the rest of the land?
Hold on, Kate. You don't have.
Oh, sorry.
Anula's, yeah.
Yeah.
And Anula was the last question on that.
Yeah, so I missed that part where it was 5. So thank you for clarifying that. I still think that there's the opportunity. I understand honoring the land. I think there might be different ways to do that. But thanks for answering that.
Thank you, Anula. So I'm going to go to public be heard. I know that Frank Amy was the first person. Frank, you still on?
Yes, I am, Bill. Okay, I have a question about the dump at 10 Church Road that's been going on through the whole COVID-19 thing. Do you have a new update for us?
I don't have a new update other than to say that Vince called this afternoon. I was on the other line, so I did not get a chance to talk to him. but we're supposed to talk in the morning. And if I have any new details, I will let you know. I can give you a call.
Okay, another thing, what has happened to the CT Mail engineer who was supposed to be overseeing this whole removal for him? Remember on the town board meetings?
And
He is-
you asked me about that the other day. I have
Yes.
not spoken with Vince since, but I will ask him that tomorrow.
Okay, I have one more thing. I would like
Yep.
to read you an email that Pam received from Vince this afternoon.
Okay.
It says, Pam, I have not heard from Frank, but I understand Ellen has, exclamation point. Just excuse the grammar and the spelling because this is not my writing. Not quite sure why there is no communications between us. I have been on this every week since it began and have not shunned any of my responsibilities. The town drags their feet, lawyers drag their feet. I am the only one on your side in this cluster mess. This is Vincent's email. You will get a copy of it. I have issued a criminal summons and the judge requested himself another winner. I don't understand that, but nobody wants to face up to Carolus. One of the key witnesses who saw the trucks filled at Carolus's location and followed them up here has refused to submit a deposition as well. I am at the end of my rope. I will not have the soil tested as there is no more funds to do so. CT Mail wants close to $12,000 to test as there, and this is hard to read, as there has to be so many tests. I don't know what that means. I have spent close to 20,000 plus 5,000 testing your well. I done with testing for sure. That's a refusal to follow the testing procedure. The wall I showed you will not have a fence on top and will have more of a slope to it. In the future, please call me, as going to the city, which I think means the town, is
Right.
doing nobody any good. Respectfully, Vincent Canigliaro. This is a refusal to do anything. And this is supposed to be taken care of by a engineer as agreed to on the town board meetings. And so what do you think of this?
It doesn't sit well with me. I'll
Well,
read you.
you get a copy.
Yeah, send me a copy of that, will you?
Yeah, so I'd like somebody to follow up on this.
I'll be talking to him tomorrow.
Yeah, well, talking, I don't know. I don't know what's going on because there's been a lot of talking, but he doesn't listen. He does what he wants.
Well, the one thing I'll just remind you, Frank, and I'll remind the public, is that the charges are winding
I
their way
understand,
through.
but I was told by a very reputable engineer that his excavator cannot even deal with this stuff. It has to, there's a New York State solid waste law that says it has to be dealt with by a certified New York State engineer. And that was all agreed to in the beginning. And now apparently the engineer's out of the picture.
That's not quite the information that I have, but I'll look into that.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it. I'm not calling you out on this.
No,
I just wanted to
I get
share
that, Frank.
that somebody is not following the rules here.
Right. Well, they haven't followed the rules from day one.
Okay. All right. Well, I will definitely have Pam forward this email to you and Ellen.
Thank you. And I again have text into him that I will call him in the morning.
Okay, because this just came this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, so
Thanks,
we'll
Frank.
get to you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, bye.
Bill, as an update, do you know where the legal case is?
I don't. My understanding is it all got sent down to Kingston to Judge Rounds for him to reassign to another municipality. Joe, did you had a question earlier? Unmute.
I think you just kind of hit it. I was just wondering, I know all the parties have been given their summonses, is my understanding. So how long now before we can actually get, into?
I can't answer that, Joe, because what happened is that both Woodstock judges have recused themselves for various reasons. So what happens is the whole summons goes down to Judge Rounds, and I forget the court he's in, down in Kingston, for reassignment to another municipality. So that's what we're waiting for right now.
Okay, now when that happens, just out of curiosity, we'll be notified where it will be. Will we be allowed to attend those or no? Just out of curiosity.
Technically, the courts are open to the public. With the pandemic going on, that's
Right.
been a little sporadic.
Okay.
We did have another zoning issue up on McDaniel Road that the neighbors were keen on going to the proceedings, and they were not allowed, or maybe one of them was allowed. So
Okay.
I honestly, you should be allowed, but where the courts are with the pandemic is another question. And it may be that just one or two representatives from the community go.
Yeah, so we have no real time frame. We don't know if it's a month, 2 months, no clue.
It's all in Judge Round's hands at this point.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Justice does not move swiftly.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome, Joe. Any other public be heard? I'm looking for
Nobody
yes.
wrote in the, nobody else wrote in the chat.
Okay.
I think somebody did want to ask another question, if it's possible. I thought I saw. Let me see. I think it was in regards to the moratorium.
Okay, well, I did take the last question, but I'll take one more and then we'll
Okay.
wrap that up for tonight. Did somebody else have their hand up?
I think it was Kate. Did you want to say something?
I was just asking if the Woodstock Way, I'm sorry, I couldn't remember your names.
Jesse and Ryan.
Sorry, thank you. Jesse and Ryan, if you all had considered putting a variance or an easement on the other part of the land so that that would kind of, you know, be a common ground for the community so that it's still an open space. I didn't know if that's something you all had considered. I'd love to hear if you have, or if you would consider it.
I think we're open to conversation to really kind of hear everybody's voice. Yeah.
Is that on this Friday, you said, is the public time where people can come and talk to you?
So yeah, so we're inviting the contiguous neighbors on Friday at 10 o'clock to take a look at what we've staked out. And yeah, and I ultimately I'd like to be able to answer everybody's questions at that time, but also be able to, you know, understand where everybody's coming from on it. I think it's important for us to feel that the community is going to be on board for what we can potentially do there. And if that's the case, great. If it's not, then, you know, maybe it's not for us.
With that, I'm going to wrap up the meeting. Our next meeting is on April 13th. We should have more on the moratorium and where that is in the process. Terry, if you want to reach out with any thoughts, feel free to do that. And don't forget, Richard, when is that housing committee meeting?
There's a committee meeting tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Okay. 5 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Kirk, right? We're
Yes.
still on 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically, Kirk runs it very much like this meeting. There's a public be heard if you want, you know, that stuff. So
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. This was a very good meeting, very productive and very civil. You make me proud to be a Woodstocker. With that, I'll call for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a nice evening, guys.
Thank you all.